All right, hello everyone, and welcome to a wonderful wintry day here on Tuesday, March 14th. And I am here with you for the Fed League Flash for today. Uh, Gary Ryan here with you. A couple of brief news notes. And they are brief. Nick Gullo for the Elmira Mammoth has been suspended 2 games. That's for a spearing incident that happened this last weekend. And the Binghamton Black Bears have signed 2 forwards. Andrew Logar, he is from Buffalo State, and Justin Samaro, he most recently played for Morrisville State. Black Bears have had a lot of good fortune in the past with signing players from the SUNY Athletic Conference, and so they're dipping into the well once again with those two. The one position will be filled for Tyson Kirkby, who still has 1 game left on his suspension, and then Tyler Jurich is still not cleared to play, so the other will fit that position. So that rounds out the forward group again for the Black Bears for the time being. Now, what I want to do today is I want to do a kind of a dig into one of the teams from the Fed. I want to look at the Elmira Mammoth and kind of break things down a little bit. So just looking at the history, Elmira has had pro hockey for about 22, 23 years now. And this is the third pro team in Elmira history. First team was the Elmira Jackals, who began in the United Hockey League. And they played until that league, I could say folded. They didn't really fold yet. They reinvented themselves as a new International Hockey League, and then a couple of years later, that was the end of them. But Jackals, rather than go to the IHL, went to the ECHL. Now, the Jackals drew very well in their time in Elmira. With the UHL, the first season they drew over 3,000 fans, 30-13. Final season they were up to 34-27, so they were playing to just about a packed house. It was like 92% capacity, and they were pretty successful. 232 wins, 254 losses, 46 overtime losses in the 8 years of their UHL history. And then the ECHL, that bumped up the attendance a little bit to start off with. The first season that the Jackals were in the ECHL, capacity or the average attendance was 35-25. And things went pretty well for quite a few years. And then finally, the last couple of seasons, things fell apart a little bit. The team wasn't very competitive, and attendance really dipped off. Final season that the Jackals were in existence, which was the 16-17 season, the average draw was only 2,300 per game. Now, again, Jackals were very successful on the ice, 344 wins in about 700 games played. So now there was a 1-year gap, and then the Fed came in and said, hey, we want to come into Elmira, brought in the Elmira Enforcers. And, they played very well. They were successful on the ice. They were successful at the gate in the 2 full seasons that the Enforcers played. They drew 3,137 and 3,046. And then COVID hit. And, of course, there was a big to-do behind the scenes with owner Robbie Nichols and the Chemung County Arena Authority. And so basically, the Enforcers got kicked out. And despite drawing well and despite performing well, 79 wins in 2 seasons, so 2 plus 25 games. So, again, Elmira loses her team. And in the 1 year gap, Steve Donner purchases First Arena and makes all sorts of renovations, cleaned up the place real nice, and renovations went even into the early part of this season when the Mammoth started playing. So the Fed saw Elmira as a very lucrative market because, okay, you don't have to deal with a lease. That means better overhead, uh, a lower bottom line, and again, Steve Donner, had some pretty deep pockets. So the Fed said, "All right, let's give this another go. Let's put a team in Elmira." Elmira is really a really solid market from a business perspective for the Fed. So, okay. Um, Things, of course, got off to a very rocky start, which we'll get into in a little bit, which has affected attendance. There was a lot of skepticism, I guess you could say, by the fan base after having the team basically ripped out from under them with the enforcers. And so now this year they're only averaging 2073 per game. So they're hoping, obviously, the more successful that the team is on the ice and the more committed that they show themselves to the market, the more fans will turn out. So that is the hope. Now, a couple things that have marked the Mammoth and their franchise. One is constant change. In 45 games played so far this year, their all-time roster spans across 65 players now. And as far as I can tell, there's only 5 members of the original group that was signed that are still with the team. That would be Kyle Stevens, Mo Levac, Harley White, Mike Cosentino, who is not playing but is serving as the assistant GM, and Stavros Soilis. There are 12 players currently on the roster that were not there earlier this year. They were brought in by trades, and there's been a lot of trades. Some of the players that are gone, Matt Bazran, Don Carter Jr., Chase Tabari, Chris Hunt, Yanni Lariakos, Ryan Marker, Parker Mascal, Nick Papandrea, Richard Shipman, and there's a lot of other names. But, I mean, those are some pretty solid Fed players that are no longer with the team. The turnover wasn't just limited to the player roster, it also extended to the front office. Start of the year, the GM/coach was Glenn Tamaris, who has had a long and very successful career with Elmira College. So, he was a kind of a natural fit to kind of build an identity with the team as far as the community goes. But unfortunately, he had some things going on with his family that he needed to step down the end of December to attend to those matters. So, in the meantime, they're now without a coach. Mike Cosentino stepped into the role of assistant coach as well as already holding the duties of assistant GM. This was after he retired as a player after the 3rd week of the season. So you had player coaches on the staff at the beginning of the year, Parker Mascal and Yanni Lariakos. Now Mascal is up in Watertown and Lariakos is down in Mississippi. So right now we have Steve Donner, team president, owner. He's also serving as the GM now. You have Mo Levac, who's the player/head coach. Now, last week he did not play. He just focused on the coaching duties. And, of course, Mike Cosentino, we mentioned before, is serving as an assistant coach. There's been a lot of turnover in goal. When Elmira began the year, they had the trio of Tyler McCucci, Mike Cosentino, and Harley White. As far as players, Harley's the only one that's left. And, Mike retired and then came on board as front office personnel for the team. And Tyler McCucci, he left the team as well. So now currently the team is sitting in 4th place. 45 games played. They have a record of 13, 26, and 6 for 44 points. That's 5 points behind Watertown. Chances are extremely high that they will make the playoffs, thanks to Delaware. Their magic number right now is 10 points. If they get 10 points, they clinch a playoff spot. The other thing that has really marked the team is how streaky they've been. Of course, they got off to that horrific start as they were trying to find the right pieces to bring in to solidify the team. Started the year 0-9-1, and then they caught fire. Next 5 games, they went 4-0-1, 13 out of possible 15 points. So things are looking good, but then turned around. Next 10, they went 1-8-1. Later on, they won 6 straight. And then there's another downturn, and currently they're on a streak where they're 2-6-2. There's a couple times when they hit those hot streaks when they passed Watertown in the standings, but then, when they went cold again, they fell back in the 4th place. Now, the next opponent that they have is Binghamton Black Bears. Black Bears are also 2-6-2 in their last 10. So they're hoping with the home and home coming up this weekend that they can gain a little traction and chip away at that magic number to get into the playoffs. Current leaders, you have Tate Leeson, 16 goals, 35 points. He's averaging a point per game. Unfortunately, he's the only player on Elmira who is averaging a point per game. You have Stavros Solis. He's got 10 goals, 28 points. Dalton Anderson has 13 goals and 20 points. He, of course, began the year with the Columbus River Dragons. You have Nick Gullo, 9 goals, 28 points. And on the blue line, you have Nathan Campbell, who's chipped in 12 points and is leading the team currently with a -10, which isn't bad considering how things have been. There's only 9 players on the team that have played 34 games. And 5 of them came in via trade. In goal right now, you have Thomas Proudlock, who's 4-8-2, of 367 goals against, 910 save percentage. Harley White began the year really struggling, but he's played much better as of late. He's 5-7-2, a 504 GAA, 884 save percentage. Now, as you look at the numbers, they're averaging 2.9 goals scored per game. That's dead last in the league. And they're averaging surrendering per game of 4.6, which is 8th. So those aren't great numbers. So that's where you look at, okay, there's a 1.7 goals per game disparity, and Nathan Campbell's a -10. That's pretty respectable. Power play comes in at 16.9%. That's 7th in the league. The penalty kill is 81.3%, which is 6th. So the special teams aren't great, but they're not horrible either. They're all right. So their most likely opponent in the playoffs is Danbury. That's kind of bad news for Elmira. Head-to-head so far this year, they've gone 0-6-2, only collecting 2 points out of a possible 24. And so that's where you look at things. So they've had their first year struggles. Of course, they came in with Motor City and Mississippi. And obviously, they've really faced their challenges. Really, their big need right now is stability in the front office with GM. So hopefully somebody besides Steve can take on that role, not because Steve is incapable, but just to kind of alleviate the burden. You get a full-time coach in there, you get a star offensive player, and you build off of your goaltending tandem of Proudlock and White, and this can become a very good team. So we'll see what happens next year when they enter into year 2. All right, so that is where we're at. That's a brief look at the Elmira Mammoth. Let me know what you think. Let me know your opinion on the team. Comment down below. Hit like, hit subscribe. We'll catch you tomorrow with another news video, and we'll talk to you then. In the meantime, have a great day. Stay safe out there with all the snow.